Ah, good evening, well, good day, good afternoon, whatever the fucking time of day it is for all of you lovelies. It is I, your Lord Leonard, with here a story, a reading of chapter 4 because I had unknowingly deleted it. Funny thing is, I had previously recorded this, and so I thought I had uploaded it. But when I went into the actual video that was titled Chapter 4, it was not Chapter 4. So I essentially have to re-record this properly and reread it. Um, yes, so that's what we're going to do. So, without further more delay, let us just get on with it. All right, shall we? Sorry again for the confusion, but we're going to do this the proper way now. Anyways, chapter 4 of Fairy Tale. Visiting Mr. Bowditch. Andy Chen, the seller. In other news, a hospital meeting. When I showed up the next morning at November 1st, number 1 Sycamore Street, Radar's greeting was exuberant, but not as frenzied. That made me think she was getting used to the new order. She did the morning necessary, gobbled her breakfast that had brought home a 25-pound sack of her chow, then wanted to play with the monkey. I still had some time when she tired of that, so I went into the living room to see if the vintage television worked. I wasted some time looking for the zapper. But of course, Mr. Bowditch's idiot box was from the pre-Zappa era of home entertainment. There were two big dials below the screen. The one on the right had numbers on it, channels, I presumed, so I turned on the one on the left. The hum from the TV wasn't as disturbing as the noises from the shed, but it was still a bit worrisome. I stepped back, hoping it wouldn't explode. After a while, the Today Show swam into view, Matt Lauer and Savannah Guthrie, chatting it up with a couple of politicians. The picture wasn't 4K, it wasn't even 1K, but it was something, at least. I tried moving the antenna that Mrs. Sylvius had called rabbit ears. I turned it one way and the picture got better, marginally better. I turned it the other way and today disappeared into a snowstorm. I looked behind the unit. The backing was full of small holes to let out the heat, which was considerable, and through them I saw the orange glow of tubes. I was pretty sure they were producing the humming sound. I snapped it off, wondering how annoying it must have been to get up every time you wanted to change the channel. I told Radar I had to go to school, but I needed another picture first. I handed her the monkey. Do you mind holding that in your mouth? It's pretty cute. Radar was happy to oblige. With no baseball practice, I got to the hospital by mid-afternoon. At the desk, I asked if Howard Bowditch was allowed to have visitors. A nurse had told me he was going to need another operation. The desk lady checked something on her monitor and told me I could go up and see. As I turned toward the elevators, she told me to wait up. She had a form for me to fill out. It was for my contact information, in case of emergency. The requesting patient was Howard Adrian Bowditch. My name had been filled in a Charles Reed. You are him, aren't you? The desk lady said. Yes, but the last name is spelled wrong. I scratched out and printed Reed, Reade. He said for you to contact me. Doesn't he have anyone else, like a brother or sister? Because I don't think I'm old enough to make any big decisions, like if. I didn't want to finish. She didn't need me to. He signed a DNR before he went up for surgery. A form like this is just if he needs to bring you something. Well, needs you to bring him something. What's a DNR? She told me. It was nothing I really wanted to hear. She never answered my question about relatives, because she probably didn't know. Why would she? I filled out the form with my home address, email address, and cell phone number. Then I went upstairs, thinking there was a double shitload of things I didn't know about Howard Adrian Bowditch. He was awake, and his leg was no longer suspended, but judging by his slow speech and the glassy look in his eyes, he was pretty stoned. You again, he said, which wasn't exactly mighty glad to see you, Charlie. Me again, I agreed. Then he smiled. If I'd known him better, I would have told him he should use it more often. Drag up a chair and tell me how you like the look of this. There was a blanket up to his waist. He tossed it back, revealing a complex steel gadget that encased his leg from the shin to upper thigh. There were thin rods going into his flesh, the points of entry sealed off with little rubber gasket thingies that were dark with dried blood. His knee was bandaged and looked as big as a bread loaf. A fan of those thin rods went through the wrappings. He saw the expression on my face and gave a chuckle. Looks like an implement of torture from the Inquisition, doesn't it? It's called an external fixator. Does it hurt? Thinking that was the stupidest question of the year, those stainless steel rods had to go right into his leg bones. I'm sure it would, but fortunately I have this. He held up his left hand. In it was a gadget that looked like the sort of remote his old school TV didn't have. Pain pump. Supposedly it allows me enough to damp down the pain, but not enough to get high. Only since I've never used anything stronger than Emprin, I believe I'm as high as a kite. I think maybe you are, I said, and this time he didn't just chuckle. He outright laughed. I laughed with him. It will hurt, I suppose. He touched the fixator, which formed a series of metal rings around the leg so black with bruising it hurt just to look at it. I was told by the doctor who attached it early this morning that devices like this were invented by the Russians during the Battle of Stalingrad. Now he touched one of the thin steel rods just above the bloody casket. The Ruskies made these stabilizing rods out of bicycle spokes. How long do you have to wear it? 6 weeks if I'm lucky. And heal well. 3 months if I'm not so lucky. They gave me some fancy hardware. I believe titanium was involved. But by the time the fixator comes off, my leg will have frozen solid. Physical therapy was supposed to be thawed, but I'm told said therapy will involve considerable discomfort. As someone who knows whose Nietzsche was, you might be able to translate that. I think it means it'll hurt like hell. I was hoping for another laugh, a chuckle at least, but he only produced a wan smile and gave the dope-delivering gadget a double click with his thumb. I believe you're exactly right. If I had been fortunate enough to shuffle off this mortal coil during the operation, I could have spared myself that considerable discomfort. You don't mean that. His eyebrows, grey and bushy, drew together. Don't tell me what I mean. It belittles me and makes you sound stupid. I know what I'm facing. Then, almost grudgingly, I'm grateful to you for coming to see me. How was Radar? Good. I showed him the new pictures I'd taken. He lingered over the one of Radar sitting with her monkey in her mouth. At last, he handed my phone back. Would you like me to print one out for you? Since you don't have a phone I can send it to? I would indeed like that. Thank you for feeding her. And for showing her affection. I'm sure she'd appreciate it. I do, too. I like her, Mr. Bowditch. Howard. Howard, right. I'd like to cut your grass, if that's okay. Is there a mover in the shed? His eyes turned wary, and he put the pain controller down on the bed. No, there's nothing in that shed. Of use, that is. Then why is it locked? Was a question I knew enough not to ask. Well, I'll bring ours up. We live just down the street. He sighed if this was too much trouble for him to deal with. Given the day he'd put in, it probably was. Why would you do that? For pay? Are you looking for a job? No. Then why? I don't exactly want to talk about it. I bet there are things you don't want to talk about, am I right? The flower canister for one, the shed for another. He didn't chuckle, but his lips quirked. Too right. Is it the Chinese thing? Save a man's life and you're responsible for him thereafter? No. It was my father's life I was thinking about. Can we not go there? I'll cut your grass and maybe I'll fix the fence out front too, if you want. He looked at me a long time, then with an insight that startled me a little. If I say yes, will I be doing you a favor? I smiled. Actually, you would be. All right, fine. But a mower would take one chomp of that mess and die. There are a few tools in the cellar. Most of them are for shit. But there's a scythe that might cut it down to a mowable size if you took the rust off and sharpened the blade. There might even be a whetstone on the workbench. Don't let Radar go down the stairs. They are steep and she might fall. Okay. What about the ladder? What should I do with that? It goes under the back porch. I wish I'd left it there, then I wouldn't be here. Goddamn doctors with their goddamn bad news. Anything else? Well, a reporter from the Weekly Sun wants to write a story about me. Mr. Bowditch rolled his eyes. That rag. Are you going to do it? My dad wants me to. He said it might help with my college apps. It might at that. Although hardly the New York Crimes, is it? The guy asked about a picture of me with radar. I said I'd ask you, but I figured you wouldn't want me to do that, which is okay with me. Hero dog, is that the angle he wants? Or the one you want? I think she should get the credit. That's all. She can't exactly bark for it. Mr. Bowditch considered. All right, but I don't want him on the property. You stand with her on the walk. He can take his photo from the gate, outside the gate. He picked up the pain gadget and gave it a couple pumps. Then, grudgingly, almost fearfully, there's a leash hanging on a hook by the front door. Haven't used it in a long time. She might like a walk down the hill. On the leash, I mean. If she got hit by a car, I'd never forgive you. I said I understood that, and I sure did. Mr. Bowditch had no brothers, no sisters, no ex-wife, or one who'd passed on, either. Radar was what he had. And not too far. Once upon a time, she could walk 4 miles, but those days are gone. You better go. I think I'll sleep until they bring me a plate of that slop this place calls supper. Okay. Good to see you. It actually was. I liked him. And I probably don't need to tell you why, but I will. I liked him because he loved Radar, and I already did too. I got up, thought about patting his hand, didn't, and headed for the door. Oh, Christ, there's another thing, he said. At least one that I can think of now. If I'm still here on Monday, and I will be, the groceries will come. Delivery from Kroger's? He gave me that "are you stupid" look again. Tiller and Sons. I knew about Tiller, but we didn't shop there because it was what they call a gourmet market, meaning expensive. Had a vague memory of my mother getting me a birthday cake from there when I was 5 or 6. It had lemon frosting and cream between the layers. I thought it was the best cake in the world. The man usually comes in the morning. Can you call them and tell them to postpone the delivery until the afternoon, when you'll be there? They have the order. Okay. He put a hand on his forehead. I wasn't sure because I was in the doorway, but I thought it was shaking a little. You'll have to pay. Can you also do that? Sure. I'd have Dad give me a blank check and fill in the amount. Tell them to cancel the weekly order after this one until they hear from me. Keep track of your expenses. He ran his hand slowly down his face, as if to smooth out the lines. A lost cause, if there ever was one. God damn, I hate being dependent. Why did I ever get up on that ladder? I must have taken stupid pills. You'll be fine, I said. But going down the hall to the elevators, I kept thinking of something he'd said when we were talking about the ladder. Goddamn doctors with the goddamn bad news. Probably he'd just been talking about how long it would take his goddamn leg to goddamn heal, maybe having a goddamn physical therapist. Probably a goddamn snoop in the bargain. In the house. But I wondered. I called Bill Harriman and told him he could take a picture of me and radar if he still wanted to. I told him Mr. Bowditch's conditions, and Harriman said that was fine. Kind of a recluse, isn't he? Can't find anything about him in our files or in the beacon. I wouldn't know. The Saturday morning work for you? It did. We agreed on 10 o'clock. I got on my bike and headed home, pedaling easy and thinking hard. First about radar, leash hanging in the front hall, deeper than I had yet penetrated the big old house. Now that I thought about it, there was no ID tag hanging on Radar's collar, which probably meant no dog license certifying her free of rabies or anything else. Had Radar ever been to the vet? I was guessing not. Mr. Bowditch had his groceries delivered, which struck me as a high-class way to get your beer and skittles. And Tiller and Sons was certainly a high-class place where high-class people with a lot of folding greens shopped. Which led me to wonder, as my father did, what Mr. Bowditch had done for a living before he retired. He had an elegant way of talking, almost like a professor, but I didn't think retired teachers could afford to shop in a market that boasted of having a step-down wine cellar. Old TV, no computer, I'd bet on that, and no cell phone. Also, no car. I knew his middle name, but not how old he was. When I got home, I called Tiller and fixed the grocery delivery for 3 o'clock on Monday. I was thinking of taking my homework up to the Bowditch house when Andy Chen knocked on the back door for the first time in I didn't know how long. As little kids, Andy and I and Bertie Bird had been inseparable, even called ourselves the Three Musketeers, but Bertie's family had moved away to Dearborn. Probably a good thing for me. And Andy was a brain who was taking a bunch of AP courses, including physics at the nearby branch of the University of Illinois. Of course, he was also a jock, excelling in two sports I didn't play. Tennis was one, the other was basketball, coached by Harkness, and I could guess why Andy was here. Coach says you should come back and play baseball, Andy said. After checking our fridge for any tasty bites, he settled on some leftover Kung Pao chicken. He says you're letting the team down. Uh-oh, pack your bags, we're going on a guilt trip, I said. I don't think so. He says you don't have to apologize. I wasn't planning on it. His brain's basically fried. You know that he calls me the Yellow Peril, as in get out there, Yellow Peril, and God, that big bastard. You put up with that. I was both curious and horrified. He thinks it's a compliment, which I find hilarious. Besides, 2 more seasons and I'll be out of Hillview and playing for Horsfra. Division 1. Here I come. Full ride, baby. And I'll be the Yellow Peril no more. Did you really say that old guy's life? That's what I'm hearing at school. The dog saved him. I just called 911. It didn't rip your throat out? No, she's a sweetie, and she's old. She wasn't old the day I saw her. That day she was out for blood. Is it creepy inside? Stuffed animals, Kit Kat clock that follows you with its eyes, chainsaw down cellar. Kids say he could be a serial killer. He's not a serial killer. And the house isn't creepy. That was true. It was a shed that was creepy. That weird scuttering sound had been creepy. And radar, she knew that sound had been creepy too. Okay, Andy said. I gave you the message. Got anything else to eat? Cookies? No. The cookies were at Mr. Bowditch's house. Chocolate marshmallow and pecan sandies that usually come from Tiller and Sons. Okay. Later, dude. Later, you yellow peril. We looked at each other and broke up laughing. For a minute or two, it was like we were 11 again. On Saturday, I got my picture taken with radar. There was indeed a leash in the front hall, hanging next to a winter coat with a pair of old-fashioned galoshes beneath it. I thought about going through the pockets of the coat just to see what I might see, and told myself not to be a snoop. There was a spare collar attached to the leash, but no license tag. As far as town government knew, Mr. Bowditch's dog was flying. Under the radar. We went down the path out front and waited for Bill Harriman to show up. He did so on the dot, driving a beat-up old Mustang and looking like he maybe graduated from college the year before. Radar gave a few token growls when he parked and got out. I told her he was okay and she quieted down, only sticking her nose to the rusty gate to give his pants leg a sniff. She growled again when he stuck his hand over the gate for a shake with me. Protective, he observed. I guess she is. I expected him to have a big camera. I probably got the idea from some Turner classic movie about crusading newspaper reporters. But he took our picture with his phone. After 2 or 3, he asked if she'd sit. If she will, take a knee beside her. That'll be a good one. Just a boy and his dog. She's not mine, I said, thinking she actually was, for the time being, anyway. I told Radar to sit, not knowing if she would. She did, right away, as if just waiting for the command. I got down beside her. I noticed Mrs. Richland had come up to watch with her hand, shading her eyes. Put your arm around her, Harriman said. When I did, Radar licked my cheek. It made me laugh. That was a picture that appeared in the next issue of The Sun. And not just there, as it turned out. What's it like in the house? Harriman asked, pointing to it. I shrugged. Like any other house, I guess. Normal. Not that I knew, having only seen the hall of old reading matter, the kitchen, the living room, and the front hall. Nothing out of the ordinary, then? Because it looks spooky. I opened my mouth to say the TV was from before the days of cable, let alone streaming, then closed it again. It occurred to me that Harriman had progressed from picture taking to interviewing. Trying to, at least, as a newbie. He wasn't exactly subtle. Nope, it's just the house. I better get going. We'll be taking care of the dog until Mr. Bowditch gets out of the hospital. This time I was the one who was struck out of hand. Radar didn't growl, but watched closely for any funny business. Hope the pictures are okay. Come on, Radar. I started toward the house. When I looked back, Harriman was crossing the street to talk to Mrs. Richland. There was nothing I could do about that, so I went around back with Radar coming along at my heel. I noticed that after walking for a bit, she limbered up and put the ladder under the back porch, where she was also a snow shovel and a big old pair of gardening shears that looked as rusty as the bolt on the gate and would probably be just as hard to operate. Radar peered down at me from halfway up the steps, which was cute enough for me to take another picture. I was getting foolish about her. I knew it and didn't mind owning it. There were cleaning products under the kitchen sink and a neat pile of paper grocery bags with the Tiller logo on them. There were also rubber gloves. I put them on, took a bag, and went on poop patrol. Got plenty, too. On Sunday, I put Radar on her leash again and walked her down the hill to our house. She moved slowly at first, both because of her arthritic hips and because she clearly wasn't used to being away from home. She kept looking at me for reassurance, which touched my heart. After a while, though, she began to make her way more easily and confidently, stopping to sniff telephone poles and to squat here and there, so the passing dogs knew that Radar Bowditch had been there. Dad was home. Radar initially shrank back from him, growling, but when my dad held out his hand, she came forward enough to sniff it. Half a slice of bologna sealed the deal. We stayed for an hour or so. Dad quizzed me about my photo shoot and laughed when I told him how Herman tried to interview me about the inside of the house and how I'd shut him down. It'll get better if he sticks with the news business, Dad said. The Weekly Sun is just the place where he starts building his clipbook. By then, Radar was snoozing beside the couch where Dad had once passed out drunk. He bent down and ruffled her fur. I bet she was an engine when she was in her prime. I thought of Andy's story about the terrifying beast he had encountered 4 or 5 years earlier and agreed. You should see if she has any meds for her arthritis. And probably she should have a tablet for heartworm. I'll check around. I had taken off her leash, but now I clipped it to her collar. She raised her head. We should go back. Do you want to keep her for the day? She looks pretty comfortable. No, I should take her back. If he asked why, I'd tell him the truth, because I didn't think Howard Bowditch would like it. He didn't ask. Okay. Want to ride? That's all right. I think she'll be fine if we go slow. And she was. On the way back up the hill, she seemed glad to be sniffing grass that wasn't her own. On Monday afternoon, a neat little green van with Tiller and Sons painted on the side, in gold no less, pulled up. The driver asked me where Mr. Bowditch was. I told him, and he handed the bags to me over the gate as if that were the usual thing, so I guess it was. I filled in the amount on the blank check Dad had signed, pretty horrified at the idea of 105 scoots for 3 bags of groceries, and handed it back. There were lamb chops and ground sirloin, which I put in the freezer. I wasn't going to eat his food, cookies excepted, but I wasn't going to let it go to waste either. With that taken care of, I went down the cellar, closing the door behind me so Radar wouldn't try to follow. It wasn't the least bit serial killerish, only musty and dusty, as if nobody had been down there for a long time. The overhead lights were fluorescent bars, one of them flickery and half dead. The floor was rough cement. There were tools on pegs, including the scythe, which looked like the kind of thing Old Man Death carries in the cartoons. In the center of the room was a work table covered by a drop cloth. I lifted it for a peek and saw a partially assembled jigsaw puzzle that appeared to have a zillion pieces. From what I could see, there was no box to check it against. It was meant to be a mountain meadow with the Rockies in the background. There was a folding chair set up at one end of the table, while most of the remaining pieces were spread out. The seat was dusty, from which I deduced that Mr. Bowditch hadn't been working his puzzle for quite some time. Maybe he'd given up. I know I would have. A lot of what was left to be assembled was plain old blue sky without even a single cloud to break the monotony. I'm talking about this at more length than it deserves. Maybe, but then again, maybe not. There was something sad about it. I couldn't express the reason for that sadness then, but I'm older now and think I can. It was about the jigsaw, but it was also the antique TV and the Hall of Old Reading Matter. It was about an elderly man's solitary pursuits, and the dust on the folding chair, on the books and magazines, suggested that even those were winding down. The only things in the cellar that looked like they were used regularly were the washer and dryer. I fluffed the cover back over the puzzle and checked out a cabinet between the furnace and the water heater. It was old fashioned, full of drawers. I found screws in one, pliers and wrenches in another, stacks of rubber banded receipts in a third, chisels and what had to be a whetstone in the fourth. I put the whetstone in my pocket, grabbed the scythe, and went upstairs. Radar wanted to jump on me, and I told her to stand clear so I didn't accidentally poke her with the blade. We went out back, where I knew I could get 4 bars on my phone. I sat on the steps, and Radar sat beside me. I opened Safari, typed sharpening with the whetstone, looked at a couple of videos, and went to work. It didn't take long to put a pretty keen edge on the scythe. I took a picture to show Mr. Bowditch, then biked to the hospital. Found him sleeping. Biked back in the late afternoon light and fed Radar. Missed baseball a little. Well, maybe more than a little. On Tuesday afternoon, I started scything the tall grass, first in the front yard and then in the back. After an hour or so, I looked at my red hands and knew that blisters would soon form there if I wasn't careful. I put Radar on her leash, walked her down to our house, and found a pair of Dad's work gloves in the garage. We walked back up the hill, going slowly in deference to Radar's sore hips. I whacked away at the grass on the side while Radar snoozed, then fed her and knocked off for the day. Dad cooked hamburgers on the backyard grill, and I ate 3, plus cherry cobbler for dessert. Dad drove me to the hospital and waited downstairs reading reports while I went up to visit Mr. Bowditch. I saw he'd also had a hamburger, plus mac and cheese on the side, but he hadn't eaten much of either. Of course, he hadn't spent 2 hours swinging a scythe, and although he tried to be pleasant and looked at some new pictures of Radar, plus one of the scythe and another of his half-cut front lawn, it was clear to me he was in a lot of pain. He kept pushing the button that released the dope. The third time he didn't, it made a low buzzing sound, like when a contestant on a game show gives a wrong answer. Fucking thing. I'm maxed out for an hour. Better go, Charlie, before I start barking at you just because I feel miserable. Come back Friday. No, Saturday. Maybe I'll feel better by then. Any word on when they're going to let you out? Sunday, maybe. A lady came and said she wanted to help me work on a. He raised his big hands, bruised on the back from IV needles, and made quotation marks. Recovery plan. I told her to fuck off. Not in those exact words. I'm trying to be a good patient, but it's hard. It's not just the pain, it's. He made a weak, circling gesture, then dropped his arms back to the coverlet. Too many people? You're not used to it. You understand. Thank God somebody does. And too much noise. Before she left, the woman had named something like Ravenhugger. Asked me if I had a bed on the first floor of my house. I don't, but the couch pulls out. Although it hasn't been made up as a bed in a long time. I guess maybe not ever. I only bought it because it was on sale. I'll make it up if you tell me where the sheets are. Do you know how to do that? As the son of a widower who had been a very active alcoholic, I did. Also, how to wash clothes and buy groceries. I've been a good little codependent. Yes. Linen closet, second floor. Have you been up there yet? I shook my head. Well, I guess now is your chance. It's across from my bedroom. Thank you. No prob. And the next time that lady comes in, tell her I'm your recovery plan. I got up. Better go and let you get some rest. I went to the door. He spoke my name and I turned back. You're the best thing that's happened to me in a long time. Then, as if speaking as such to himself as to me, I'm going to trust you. I can't see any choice. I told Dad what he said about me being the best thing that had happened to him, but not about the trusting part. Some instinct made me hold that back. Dad gave me a strong one-armed hug and kissed my cheek and said he was proud of me. That was a good day. On Thursday, I forced myself to knock on the shed door again. I really did not like that little building. No one knocked back or scratched. I tried to tell myself I'd imagined that weird skittering sound, but if I had, Radar had imagined it too, and I didn't think dogs were much in the imagination department. Of course, she could have been reacting to my reaction, or if I'm going to tell the truth, she could have sensed my fear and my almost instinctive revulsion. On Friday, I trundled our lawn boy up the street and went to work on the half-tamed yard. I figured it could have looking relatively swift by the weekend. The following week was spring vacation, and I planned to spend a lot of it at number one Sycamore. I'd clean the windows and go to work on the picket fence, get it standing up straight again. I thought seeing those things would cheer Mr. Bowditch up. I was mowing along the Pine Street side of the house. Rita was inside, wanting nothing to do with the roaring lawn boy. And my phone vibrated in my pocket. I killed the mower and saw Arcadia Hospital on the screen. I took the call with a sinking in my gut. Sure, something was going to tell me Mr. Bowditch had taken a turn for the worse, or worse still, passed away. It was about him, all right, but it wasn't anything bad. A lady named Mrs. Ravensburger asked if I could come in tomorrow morning at 9 to talk about Mr. Bowditch's recovery and aftercare. I said I could, and then asked if I could bring along a parent or guardian. Well, she asked it, and I said probably. I saw your picture in the paper with that wonderful dog of his. Mrs. Bowditch owes you both a debt of gratitude. I assumed she was talking about the son, and I guess she could have. But Radar and I turned up elsewhere, too. Maybe I should say everywhere. Dad came in late, as he usually did on Fridays, and he had a copy of the Chicago Tribune, opened to page 2, where the Trib ran a little sidebar called In Other News. It collated bite-sized items of a more cheerful nature than the stuff on the front page. The one featuring Radar and me was headlined, Hero Dog, Hero Teen. I wasn't exactly shocked to see myself in the Trib, but I was surprised. This is a pretty good world, all evidence to the contrary notwithstanding, and there are thousands of people doing thousands of good deeds every day, maybe millions. A kid helping out an old guy who fell off a ladder and broke his leg was nothing special, but the picture sold it. Radar was caught in mid lick, me with my arm around her neck and my head thrown back in laughter, and looking, dare I say, rather handsome, which made me wonder if Gina Pasquarelli, my daydream girl, had come across it. See that? Dad asked, tapping the caption. AP, Associated Press. That picture's probably in 500 or 600 newspapers today, coast to coast, not to mention all over the internet. Andy Warhol said eventually everyone in America would be famous for 15 minutes, and I guess you're having your quarter hour. Want to go out to Bingo's to celebrate? I certainly did, and while I was eating my beef ribs, the double rack, I asked Dad if he'd come with me to the hospital tomorrow to talk to a lady named Mrs. Ravensburger. He said it would be his pleasure. We met in Ravensburger's office. With her was a young woman named Melissa Wilcox, tall and toned, her blonde hair worn in a stubby, no nonsense ponytail. She was going to be Mr. Bowditch's physical therapist. She did most of the talking, checking a little notebook from time to time, so as not to forget anything. She said that after some discussion, Mr. Bowditch had agreed to allow her into his home twice a week to work on his range of motion and get him on his feet again. First with Canadian crutches, the kind with metal circlets for arm support, then with a walker. She would also take his vitals to make sure he was progressing nicely and check on something called pin care. Which you will have to do, Charlie. I asked her what that meant. She explained that the rods going into his leg had to be swabbed regularly with disinfectant. She said it was a painful procedure, but not as painful as an infection that could lead to gangrene. I wanted to come 4 days a week, but he wouldn't have it. He's very clear on what he will and won't have. Tell me about it, I thought. He'll need a lot of help at first, Charlie, and he says you'll give it. According to him, Mrs. Ravensburger put in, you're his recovery plan. She was talking to me, but looking at my dad as if inviting him to object. He didn't. Marissa flipped to a new page on her little notebook, which was bright purple with a snarling tiger on the front. He says there's a bathroom on the first floor? Yes. I didn't bother telling her it was really small. She'd find that out on her first home visit. She nodded. That's a big deal, because he won't be capable of climbing stairs for some time. But he will be able to eventually. If he works hard, sure. He's elderly, claims he doesn't know exactly how old he is, as a matter of fact, but he's in good shape, doesn't smoke, says he doesn't drink, isn't carrying any extra weight. That's a biggie, Dad said. You bet it is. Weight bearing is a huge concern, especially in the elderly. The plan is for him to leave the hospital on Monday. There'll have to be safety bars installed on the sides of the toilet before then. Can you do that this weekend? If not, we'll push his release back to Tuesday. I can do it. I saw my YouTube videos in my immediate future. He'll need a urinal for nights and a bedpan for emergencies. You okay with that? I said yes, and I was. I had cleaned up vomit on more than one occasion. Dumping poo from a bedpan into the toilet might actually be a step up. Melissa closed her notebook. There are 1,000 other things, little things, most of them. This will help. Check it out. She took a pamphlet from the back pocket of her jeans. The title wasn't Home Care for Dummies, but it could have been. I said I'd read it and put it in my back pocket. I'll know better when what's needed when I see the place for myself, Melissa said. I thought of taking a run up there this afternoon, but he's very insistent that I not go inside until he's back. Yes, Mr. Bowditch could be very insistent. I had discovered that early. Are you sure you want to take this on, Charlie? Miss Ravensburger asked. This time she didn't face check my father first. Yes. Even if it means staying with him the first 3 or 4 nights? Melissa asked. I tried to discuss the possibility of a rehab unit. There's a nice one called Riverview that has vacancies, but he wouldn't hear of it. Said he just wanted to go home. I can stay with him. Although the thought of maybe sleeping upstairs in a bedroom I'd so far not even seen was weird. No problem. It's school vacation. Mrs. Ravensburger turned to my dad. Are you all right with this arrangement, Mr. Reed? I waited. Not sure what he'd say, but he came through. A little worried about it, which is probably natural, but Charlie's responsible. Mr. Bowditch seems to have formed a bond with him, and he really has no one else. I said, Miss Wilcox, about the house. She smiled. Melissa, please, we're going to be colleagues after all. It was easier to call her Melissa than it was to call Mr. Bowditch Howard, because she was closer to my age. About the house, don't take it personally, like he's afraid you're going to steal stuff or something. He's just, well, I didn't quite know how to finish, but Dad did. He's a private person. That's right, I said. And you have to make allowances for him, being a little grouchy too, because, believe me, if I had an external fixator holding my broken leg together, I'd be grouchy too. What's his insurance situation? Dad asked Mrs. Ravensburger. Can you say? Mrs. Ravensburger and Melissa Wilcox exchanged a glance. Mrs. Ravensburger said, I'm not comfortable going into detail about the patient's financial arrangements, but I will say that according to the bursar, he intends to take care of his expenses personally. Ah, Dad said, as if that explained everything. His face said it explained nothing. He got up and shook hands with Mrs. Ravensburger. So did I. Melissa followed us out into the hall, seeming to glide in her blinding white sneakers. LSU? I asked. She looked surprised. How'd you know? The notebook. Basketball? She smiled. And volleyball. Given her height, I bet she'd have a hell of a smash. All right. And that is the end of chapter 4 of Fairy Tale. Lovelies, I thank you so much for tuning into this. This was a slightly longer read than expected for this specific chapter. But after realizing that I probably didn't even read this at all, let alone even uploaded it, uh, put a bad taste in my mouth. So I had to do that as soon as possible. But I sure hope all of you sort of enjoyed the read. I hope all of you are sort of tuning in. I hope all of you feel free to comment on these videos, any things you like, even certain improvements I could make when it comes to my reading. I'm open to suggestions. But without further ado, delay, lovelies and beautiful rats, have a marvelous day, a marvelous weekend, a marvelous time, and until next time, everyone, goodbye.